The tradition continues. We're talking about Christmas Daddies. It's the 60th annual Christmas Daddies, and a guy that's been the face and voice for Christmas Daddies for a lot of those years. We'd like to welcome Steve Murphy to the program. Welcome.
Good morning, Bill. How are you?
I'm doing well. You get pumped and excited about doing this. This is one of these things that's personal for you, giving back to the community. It's not just a show that you do. It's something that I'm sure you look forward to doing each and every year.
You're absolutely right. You remember the song from The Sound of Music where Julie Andrews sings My Favorite Things? Well,
Yep.
This would be on the top of my list of favorite things. It's something I've had the great pleasure of doing on the Halifax broadcast since way back in the early 1980s. And only in recent years have I been part of the viewing experience there on Cape Breton Island, where for many years, as you know, Bill Jessam led a local Christmas Daddies broadcast. But the tradition is very deep in Cape Breton. Goes back, I think, to the early 1970s on CJCB-TV. The first broadcast, of course, on CJCH-TV back in Halifax was in 1964. So this is the 60th annual, but I'm still a newbie. It's only number 43 for me.
Here's the thing that I want to know, and I think I know the answer. Here in Cape Breton, people, usually that's the day that they set up their tree and get all the Christmas music going and, of course, watching the show, and they give to Christmas Daddies. It's kind of tradition here in Cape Breton Island. I don't know what it's like in the mainland.
No, it's absolutely right. I think it's a maritime-wide phenomenon, and there are a couple of reasons for it, Bill, at least in my opinion, because we've been asked about this quite often. The first is that Christmas Daddies broadcast has always been the first weekend in December. These days it's on a Saturday. It used to be on a Sunday. And so obviously on that weekend, that first weekend in December, a lot of people are getting the tree, putting up the tree, digging out the CDs or the records or, putting on whatever streaming service they're using for Christmas music because it is, after all, December. The second thing is it often coincides with the tradition, the Christian tradition of Advent, which is the countdown, the beginning, the waiting time for Christmas. So I think that there's been, a melding of all of those traditions, secular and religious. And of course, it's just a function of the calendar that we are, after all, only 23 days before Christmas. So sure, it's a good time to start the preparations.
You know as well as I do, Steve, but living in the community here in Nova Scotia and Cape Breton Island and the Maritimes in general, you've seen guests, and you probably met a lot of them over the years coming in, maybe from Ontario or out west or even out of the country, and they look at the show, and I'm sure they express it, and I think I've heard it many times. How do you guys pull this off? Because it's really a special thing that we have here.
Well, they're not the only ones who say, how do we pull this off? We often ask ourselves, how do we pull this off? Because, we don't have nearly as many people. We don't have nearly as much equipment as we used to have to do the show. But, we've managed to keep the most important parts of the program intact, irrespective of all of the other changes. And to me, the most important parts are the very laser focus on children and the focus on talent. And for that, of course, we have always relied heavily on Cape Breton talent. And this year we're doing it again with Matt and Heather Rankin and Jen Shepard and the Turnbull brothers. And one of my favorites, Morgan Toney with Keith Mullins. I mean, the list goes on. And by the way, can I take this opportunity to plug the fact that we're going to be auctioning off a Turnbull Brothers kitchen party.
Oh, cool.
As part of the broadcast. And in fact, it's on the website now at ChristmasDaddies.org. But that's a great opportunity to have the Turnbull brothers come in and do a kitchen party right there in your own place. But they will also be on the show, along with a lot of other great Cape Breton talent. I mean, Hearts of Kin and Steve McIntyre and RG and the Peacemakers. I mean, the list goes on and on and on. And I'm not kidding. It goes on a lot longer than that.
Well, I'm glad you brought those groups up because they have a function coming up on November the 12th at 4 o'clock at Daniels. There's Morgan Toney, Keith Mullins, R.G. Schaller and the Peacemakers and Hearts of Kin, which they did last year and great success, and it's back again this year.
One of my favorite places in Sydney is Daniels, always has been. And if you want more information on that event or fundraisers that are going on also beginning very soon down in Hawkesbury or in Bedeck, ChristmasDaddies.org or the Facebook page too, which is CTV Christmas Daddies. So you can get all those details online.
And people get it because it may be a friend or a neighbor, or maybe back when they were growing up, they needed the services with Christmas Daddies. Yes. It's just, as you know, it's a tight-knit community here in the Maritimes, and we get it, and that's part of the reason why we give back.
Yeah, and one of the things about Christmas Daddies, too, Bill, and we know this because people have shared this with us over the years, quite often when people rely on Christmas Daddies, they're having a particularly challenging time in their lives. We know that a lot of people are having a particularly challenging time this year. And what happens, and we've been told this so many times, that the people who've been able to benefit from Christmas Daddies in the past are very willing to help when they themselves can. And many people have found a way to pay it forward by doing that. And by the way, there's a new way to help raise money, and that's this 50-50 draw we've been doing for the last, I guess it's the third year, the even split. And, last year, the Nova Scotia cash winner got $135,000. And, of course, Christmas Daddies got $135,000. So, that's another way to take part. And at the same time, give yourself a chance to win what would be a very nice Christmas gift, I think. $135,000.
Well, the Christmas kid in you, I know, loves this. We talked actually before we went on air here that you get the great task of calling them and telling them that they won. How cool is that?
Well, that was very cool. It was very cool. As a matter of fact, last year I called the lady who won, and I said, actually, I think her husband had bought the tickets. And I said to her, did you buy tickets for the 50-50, the even split? She said, yeah. I say, how many did you buy? She said, we bought 20. I said, well, I have bad news for you. 19 of them didn't win. And of course, the last one did win, $135,000. So that's available now on the ChristmasDaddies.org website as well. And the ticket sales actually go beyond the show on November 4th, and we make the draw on the 6th of December.
And of course, that's something new you started the last couple of years, which is a great success. Christmas Daddies get some money they can pass on to the Salvation Army, and of course, a chance to win some big money as well. Now, I know there's some surprises that are coming up, I'm sure, for Christmas Daddies, but we just can't let the cat out of the bag, so to speak, just yet, can we?
Well, we like to have a few surprises, and by the way, one of the reasons I can't give you any of the details is because I quite frequently am surprised myself.
I thought you were going to say sworn to secrecy. It's a Christmas Daddies thing.
I'd like to claim we're quite that well organized, Bill, but quite a lot of this show does happen. Not really by the seat of our pants, but it is live TV, and one never knows for sure what's going to happen. One thing I can tell you we will be doing, and this is on the somber side, the serious side, is we will have a special tribute this year to Alan Arkin, who for many years was a guest on the Cape Breton show and a great fan and supporter of the Daddies. And, of course, we'll be paying tribute to Bruce Guthrow, who we lost this year, who was a frequent participant and volunteer performer on the Daddies.
Nice tribute to both of those men. And again, it's coming up in December, and look forward to it each and every year, Steve. One of the big things that I want to mention, and I know there's so many different charities out there, but this is one that's near and dear to my heart. Just growing up, and when you're in a career like we have in radio and TV, you get to see the people that it affects. And like I said, you often hear stories about it. And I think it's so important that we keep this tradition alive. And you mentioned about doing the live TV show. I think that's what adds to it. It's not something that's all taped and put together. It's live. It's on the spot. And I think that's why it gets such a big response.
The only things that are predictable about Christmas Daddies, Bill, is that it will start at 11 o'clock in the morning and it will end at 6 p.m. But what happens between those hours on Saturday, December 2nd? Well, that's an unscripted play. Certain parts of it, of course, are pre-recorded. We have to produce some of it ahead of time. But a lot of what goes on is driven by the people who are watching and the people who are calling. And we're looking forward to, and we're counting on that because people really have a special need this year.